Something doesn't sit right with me about that night, and I don't know how to explain it without sounding like I've completely lost it, but I need to tell someone, because I can't stop thinking about what I saw. It was late, Sunday night, almost 11 p.m. I was sitting at my desk, half awake, trying to download some free stock images for a project that was already due. The kind of tired where your eyes feel like sandpaper. The house was quiet, just the hum of my laptop fan and the occasional creak of the floorboards settling. And then a CAPTCHA popped up. You know the ones, not the little checkbox, the other kind, the one that splits a photo into 16 small squares and asks you to select something specific. I'd done 100 of them before. Annoying, mindless, whatever. I barely even looked at the image at first. But then I read the prompt. Select all squares with people. It was a photo of a forest trail. Daytime, sunlight breaking through the branches, casting those long, blocky shadows across the path. And right in the center of the image, a woman, jogging, pink shorts, dark ponytail mid-swing, clearly mid-stride. I clicked the squares she was in, without even thinking twice. Verrecti. It didn't work. Select all squares with people. I leaned closer to the screen, took off my glasses, wiped them on my shirt, put them back on, stared harder, and then I saw it. At the very edge of the image, barely in frame, the edge of a sleeve, a black sweatshirt, and a hand, a pale thumb just poking out from the cuff. Someone was standing just off the trail, half hidden in the trees. I clicked those two squares and hit verify again. The image blinked. Select all squares with people. I sat back. Something felt wrong. Not wrong like the CAPTCHA was glitching. Wrong like the way your stomach drops when you hear a sound in an empty house and you just know something's off. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, and the image had changed. I don't mean it refreshed to a new photo. I mean the same photo had changed. The arm at the edge was further in the frame now. 3 squares instead of 2. Shoulders visible, dark jeans. Whoever this was, they'd moved closer to the trail, closer to her, and the jogger was just slightly further down the path, like she'd taken a single step forward. My hand was trembling over the touchpad. I clicked the 3 squares, hit verify. The image blinked again. Select all squares with people. I shoved my chair back, because this time his hand was outstretched, right behind her shoulder, inches away. She hadn't noticed. She was still running, still mid-stride, still completely unaware that someone was right there. I clicked every square he was in, fast as I could. Verify. Loading, and then the image came back. His face was in frame now, hood pulled up tight, a cheap Halloween mask pressed flat against his features, the kind that's almost translucent, the kind that makes a face look wrong without being able to explain exactly why. His hand wasn't reaching anymore. His hand was gripping her arm, locked on, and she had turned. She was looking right at him, mouth open, eyes wide. She was screaming. I hit every square I could, as fast as my fingers would move. Click, 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 verify. The image blinked one last time and disappeared. CAPTCHA complete. I just sat there, staring at the blank screen, heart slamming against my ribs, trying to make sense of what I had just seen, because CAPTCHAs don't work that way. Images don't change between attempts. That's not how any of this works. But I knew what I saw. I called the non-emergency police line. I felt ridiculous doing it. I told them what happened, step by step, every detail I could remember. At first, there was silence on the other end. The kind of silence that tells you the person thinks you've had too much to drink. But I kept going. The trail, the trees, the pink shorts, the black sweatshirt, the mask. And then the officer's tone shifted. They started asking questions, quickly, urgently. What did the trail look like? Could I describe the mask? Was there anything distinctive about the woman? And I answered everything I could, and then they told me. A woman named Ashley Carter had been reported missing 6 days earlier. She went jogging on the Millbrook Forest Trail on a Tuesday afternoon, alone. in pink shorts, and she hadn't come home. She was never found. I still don't know what that CAPTCHA was. I don't know if it was some glitch, some corrupted image set, some terrible coincidence. I don't know if what I saw was real, or if my exhausted brain was filling in details that weren't there. I've told myself both versions of that story more times than I can count. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. CAPTCHAs use real photos. They pull from databases of actual images, and somewhere out there, in some server, in some dataset, those photos still exist. It was 4:43 in the morning. That exact time is burned into my brain because I stared at the clock on my nightstand as the noise ripped me out of a dead sleep. It sounded like a massive engine was idling right there in our bedroom, diesel fumes drifting in through the open window. My heart was already pounding before I even knew why. My wife Madison rolled over and groaned. "What is that?" Our daughter Sophie had crawled into our bed sometime around 1 in the morning, kicking us both in the face until we were practically falling off the mattress. So neither of us had slept well to begin with. This was a bad way to start a Saturday. "Start of the apocalypse," I muttered. "Go back to sleep." "Nobody's sleeping through that," Madison said. She got up, shut the window, and pulled back the curtain. Then she sighed, the way she sighs when something genuinely irritates her deep in her soul. It's the neighbor, mowing his lawn, before the sun is even up. She let the curtain fall. "We need to talk to him, Jake." And that's when I first thought something felt off. Not wrong exactly, not yet. Just off. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was just tired and annoyed, same as Madison. I told myself I'd walk over there after a cup of coffee, have a polite word with old Mr. Greer, and that would be the end of it. I was so wrong about that. I went to the kitchen and started the coffee. Sophie shuffled in behind me, hair everywhere, asking for candy for breakfast. I told her no. She negotiated her way to toast cut into animal shapes. I stood at the living room window while the toaster worked, staring out at the yard next door. Sure enough, there he was, Dennis Greer, retired schoolteacher, 72 years old, widowed last spring, pushing his mower across his lawn in his bathrobe at 4:45 in the morning. His lawn, I noticed, was already perfectly cut. That detail nagged at me, but I let it go. By 6 o'clock I had downed 4 cups of coffee, and he was still at it. His yard is not big. A normal mow job over there takes maybe 40 minutes. He had been out there for over an hour and a half, going back and forth in those same methodical lines, and I started watching more carefully. Something was wrong with the way he was moving. Too steady, too even, like a machine set to a single speed. He never looked up, never paused, never wiped sweat from his forehead. He just kept going. That's when I crossed the yard to talk to him. I walked right up behind him, waving my arms over my head, shouting his name. He didn't turn around. I got close enough to tap him on the shoulder, and I did. He didn't react at all. Not a flinch, not a glance, nothing. He just kept pushing that mower forward, staring straight ahead at the already mowed grass, like it was the only thing in the world. And then I noticed it, a thin trickle running down his bare leg. I went back inside. I didn't know what else to do. Madison listened, and her face went through about 6 different emotions. Sophie thought it was hilarious. I tried to explain it away, the way you do when something unsettles you and you're not quite ready to admit it. Maybe he'd taken some new medication. Maybe he was sleepwalking somehow. People do strange things sometimes. There's always a reasonable explanation, but I kept watching from the window, and the reasonable explanations kept getting harder to hold on to. By 8 in the morning, he was on what had to be his 5th pass over that same perfect lawn. He'd refuel without stopping, grabbing the gas can from his driveway, pouring it while still in motion, never once breaking stride. Madison tried going over there herself around 10 o'clock. She came back pale and quiet. "It's like he's not in there," she said. I called the police. I want you to understand how awkward that call was. 20 minutes explaining to 2 different people that my elderly neighbor was mowing his lawn, repeatedly, in his bathrobe. In case there was any doubt, I confirmed, yes, this is the actual emergency I'm calling about. No, he hasn't threatened anyone. Yes, I'm sure. Please just send someone." They sent one officer. I watched from the window as he pulled into the driveway and walked up behind Mr. Greer. He did what I'd done, waving and shouting. Then he grabbed Mr. Greer's shoulder and spun him around. That forced him to release the handle of the mower, and for the first time since before sunrise, the engine went quiet. I held my breath. Mr. Greer opened his mouth. What came out was not a sound. What came out was a tentacle. Long and pale and glistening, it uncoiled from somewhere deep in his throat and wrapped itself around the officer's neck in one smooth motion, lifted him completely off the ground, and then a second one emerged, thinner than the first, and reached toward the officer's face. I yanked the curtain shut so hard, the rod nearly came off the wall. My hands were shaking. I was standing in a puddle. I'm not proud of that. "Honey?" Madison called from the kitchen. "Did they show up?" I didn't answer her. I couldn't form the words, because from outside came a new sound, a high whine joining the resumed groan of the lawnmower. I turned very slowly and opened the curtain just a crack. The officer was out there now, working the edge of the yard with a weed trimmer, going around the old oak tree in the corner, steady and methodical, just like Mr. Greer. Just like that. Within the next few hours, there were 4 of them out there, one with the weed trimmer, one with hedge clippers, another crawling along the flower beds, pulling weeds with his bare hands. The 4th was walking the perimeter, spraying the ground from a bottle filled with something neon blue that Mr. Greer had vomited directly into it about 20 minutes before. I watched that happen from the upstairs window, and I have genuinely not recovered. By 4 in the afternoon, Madison was done waiting. She wanted us packed and gone. I was halfway through loading the SUV when a tan sedan came up the street, going way too fast, drifted sideways, and wrapped itself around the oak tree in Mr. Greer's front yard. The driver's door opened, and a woman climbed out wearing a gas mask and a plastic poncho, visibly furious, steadying herself against the wrecked car. "Damn it, Kelly," she shouted. "That is it. No more driving, ever." Then she reached under her poncho and pulled out something I can only describe as a blaster. Not a gun, a blaster. She leveled it at Mr. Greer and fired. The mowing stopped. I was crouched behind my own car in the driveway, heart going about 200 beats a minute, watching a woman in a poncho methodically reduce 5 figures to glistening blue puddles on the grass. When she was done, she scanned the yard slowly, then turned and looked directly at me. "You," she said, "behind the car. Stand up." I stood up with my hands in the air and said the most reasonable thing I could think of in that moment. "Please don't blast me." Her name was Allie. The woman who'd been driving was Kelly, and a 3rd member of their group, a soft-spoken man named Martin, had been the one to call them in the first place. Martin had worked with Mr. Greer years ago, back when he was a mortician before he retired to teach. A strange body had come through Martin's funeral home, a woman with a necklace that had no clasp and blood that ran neon blue, and an autopsy that nobody had actually performed. Martin called Mr. Greer for help. Mr. Greer came to look at the body. Martin left to get sandwiches. When he came back, Mr. Greer was standing in the morgue, covered in blue slime, and the body was gone. "It just exploded," Mr. Greer had apparently said. Those were the last normal words he ever spoke. They came inside. Kelly produced a syringe the size of something you'd use on a horse and tested all 3 of us, including Sophie, which I will never fully forgive any of them for. We were all clear. Allie explained, in the measured tone of someone who has had this conversation many times, that the zombie virus is real, has been real for some time, and is now mutating in ways that are making it significantly harder to contain. The necklace is apparently a new delivery mechanism. That's concerning. The exploding is apparently a new behavior. That's also concerning. The coordinated landscaping. Nobody had seen that before either. All of this is new. All of it is worse than what came before. "It's not safe here anymore," Allie said. She glanced out the window at what remained of the yard next door. "The people we answer to will be here within a day. They do not want this to get out, and they will do whatever it takes to keep it quiet. We need a vehicle. You have one. You can come with us, or you can be here when they arrive." I looked at Madison. Madison looked at me. Sophie was on the couch watching cartoons, completely unbothered. Madison said, quietly, "Let's go. We're on the road now. I can't tell you where." I can tell you that what happened on my street is not an isolated incident, and that Ali's team is working on something that might stop it if they can get to it in time. I don't know if they will. I'm trying not to think about that. I'm watching Sophie sleep in the back seat and Madison staring out the passenger window at the dark highway ahead, and I'm telling myself that reasonable explanations still exist somewhere. But then I think about the sound of that lawnmower starting up again at 4:43 in the morning, and honestly, I'm not sure I believe that anymore. It started on a quiet, ordinary evening. I had just finished showering. Nothing strange about that. I dried off, pulled on my pajamas, reached for the door handle, and opened it. I stepped out into the hallway, and then I was standing in my bathroom again, staring at the closed door. I told myself I must have imagined it. You know how your brain does that sometimes, where you think you've done something, and it turns out you haven't. So I tried again, pushed the handle down, opened the door wide, stepped through, and I was right back in my bathroom. The door closed behind me like I'd never moved at all. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. Something was very wrong. I live alone, so when something goes sideways at home, there's no one to call out to. All I had was my phone, which I keep with me in the bathroom just in case. I called my dad first. No answer. Then I called my mum. She picked up, and I tried to explain it to her, but she kept thinking I meant the lock was broken. She said she was on her way. 15 minutes, she told me. Just hold tight. So I sat down on the edge of the bathtub and waited, and I kept my eyes on the door. I opened it again, just to look. I didn't try to step through this time. I just looked, and everything out there looked perfectly normal. My bedroom door closed, the airing cupboard closed, the stairs going down to the front hallway. All of it exactly as I'd left it. I turned back to write a message on my phone, and then I looked up. The door was shut. I don't remember it closing. There was no sound, no creak, no click, just shut, like it had never been open. I went back and reread what I'd just typed, just to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. It had only been seconds. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my mum. She was outside the bathroom door. She said she'd been calling my name. I hadn't heard a single sound through that door, not one. I told her I was right there. I told her to try the handle. She couldn't open it. She said she was going to get tools and unscrew the lock. I watched the handle the whole time she said she was doing it. It never moved. I heard nothing, but she said the lock was out. And then she said she looked through the hole where the lock had been. She said she saw an empty bathroom. No me. Just tiles and towels and the hanging shower curtain. And here's the thing that made my stomach drop. On my side of the door, there was no hole. The handle was there. The lock was there. Everything intact, like nothing had been touched at all. My mum thought it was a prank. She stopped replying to my messages, and my phone was down to 14%. I tried to break the door down. I knew it wasn't going to work, but I had to do something. I tried the window next. Thought maybe I could fit through it if I had to, but the window was locked, and I've never had the key for those locks. I moved in, and the landlord never gave them to me. I ripped down the plastic blind to get better access, pulled some plaster off the wall in the process, climbed up on top of the toilet lid, and grabbed the window handle with both hands, and it opened. I don't know why that scared me more than the door, but it did. There was something about the way the darkness outside looked. It was the middle of the day, but outside that window it was pitch black, not cloudy, not overcast, black, and the whole street looked muted, like the contrast had been turned down on everything, like the world out there was a copy of itself, a bad copy. Every instinct I had screamed at me not to lean out, but I did it anyway. I stuck my head through and looked down. I never felt myself move, but the window was closed. The blind was back on the wall. I was sitting on the bathroom floor. I don't know how far away from the window. I was just there, on the floor, feeling sick in a way I still can't put into words. My mum came back with someone who could help. They removed the hinges. They took the door completely off the frame. She sent me a photo from inside the bathroom. She couldn't see me. By then my phone was at 1%, and I realized something. Even if someone knocked the whole wall down, I don't think they'd find me. I think I'm somewhere that runs alongside where they are, close enough to text, close enough to call, but not the same place. I heard something a little while ago, through the closed window, low and quiet, like a rumble. It didn't sound like traffic. It didn't sound like anything I could name. I haven't opened the window again since. I'm still here. It happened in the desert, and if you've never lived out there, you don't understand what the desert does to people. It strips everything away. The noise, the pretending, the idea that life is supposed to look a certain way. What's left underneath, that's what the desert shows you. And sometimes, what it shows you is terrifying. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I grew up in a place where people disappear and nobody really asks why. My best friend's name was Tyler. Tyler found the body last winter. An old man, alone in a rusted-out trailer, miles from anything. White beard so long it almost touched his knees. Tyler, being Tyler, thought it was hilarious. He bought a Santa hat from the dollar store and started calling the guy Satan Claus. It became a thing. People came to see. People who had nothing else to do, nowhere else to be. The kind of people the desert collects. But then someone talked, and word got to the wrong ears. That was the beginning of everything unraveling. See, Tyler didn't grow up out here. He didn't understand the ecosystem. There are rules in a place like this, unspoken ones. You don't draw attention. You don't involve outsiders. And most importantly, you don't go digging around in things that were left alone on purpose. Tyler was furious when things fell apart. He blamed everyone, blamed me even. And that's when I started to really look at him, really see him. Because Tyler had always had this way of looking at me, bright and warm and full of something I couldn't quite name. Like I was the only real thing in his world. Like he was keeping himself anchored to something pure just by being near me. I had known Tyler since we were teenagers. We met in a county psychiatric facility. You know what I remember most about that place? The structure, the safety of it. Someone telling you when to eat, when to sleep, when the day was over. I missed that for years afterward. We moved in together the second we could, and before you ask, no, it wasn't like that. Not for me, anyway. I couldn't separate closeness from danger, not after everything that had happened before. So I kept myself at a distance. And Tyler, he kept me on a pedestal because of it. His untouchable girl, his pure, perfect thing. He paid half my bills. He showed up when I needed him. He asked for nothing, and in return, I let him believe in something that wasn't really me. That's a dangerous deal to make. The night everything changed, we were at a party in a bashed-up warehouse, the kind of place that smells like bad decisions and desperation. Tyler was glued to my side at first, but I watched his eyes drift across the room to a girl with long black hair and heavy makeup. I knew what was coming. I pressed myself close to him, not because I wanted to, because I didn't want her to have him either. And before I could stop myself, before I could remember what I was doing, he leaned in. I ran. I made it outside, stood in the cold desert air, and tried to breathe. I had this wild thought, like maybe I could just run, sprint out into the dark, and keep going until the earth fell away, and I was flying, weightless, free. I could almost feel it, something sprouting from my back, pushing through my skin, lifting me up into those stars. But there was no flying. There was just me, standing in the dirt, shaking. Tyler found me eventually. His eyes were soft and apologetic. He told me he was leaving with the black-haired girl. He called her Demetria, but her name was actually Brittany. I didn't know why I noticed that. I just did. I watched him walk away. I counted to 1,000, and then I went back inside. That's when I found the first message, written on the concrete floor in black marker. 3 words and an arrow pointing east. Come to Daddy. I stood there for a long moment. The music was too loud. The lights were too bright. Everything felt pointless. I looked at those 3 words and I thought, what do I have to lose? I followed the arrow. Halfway across the warehouse, another message, keep coming. And then at the back wall, scrawled in big excited letters, hurry, Daddy's waiting for you. The arrow pointed to a plain door I never would have noticed otherwise. I opened it. Cold air rushed over me. Dark stairs descended into concrete. At the bottom, another message painted on the wall. Daddy's coming through the back. I turned into a long corridor lit by flickering fluorescence, and at the end of it, something was there, hunched against the wall, bony, terribly small. A body, its jaw hanging open toward the ceiling, like it had been frozen mid-scream, and above it, painted in shaky letters, Daddy. Next to him, a plastic container full of Hershey's Kisses, a little handwritten sign, give Daddy a kiss. I should have left, I know that now. But something about the absurdity of it, the bizarreness of this dead man, with his candy offering and his hand-painted sign, it made me laugh. A real laugh. The first one in longer than I could remember. I unwrapped a kiss, placed it in his open mouth, and Daddy chewed. His head rolled forward. Something glinted deep in those empty eye sockets, dark, slick, like oil moving under dirty water, and in a low, dry voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, he said, what do you want from me? I stumbled backward, half terrified, half something I couldn't explain. He lurched forward and hit the floor, with a sound like dry branches breaking. He said he could give me one thing, any one thing I desired, whatever I wanted most. I thought about it. I really did. I didn't want to be normal. I'd seen normal. I didn't want money or a house or a better life. Every change costs something. Every change causes pain. And I had already paid more than my share. What I said was, I don't know. And Daddy smiled. His skin split like old paper. He said that complicated things, but it made them interesting. He told me to feed him. A rat from the barrel beside him. He needed protein. He needed to grow. And God help me, I did it. I don't know what I expected. I don't know what I was hoping for. But when I threw that half-dissolved thing at him and he caught it mid-air, when he swallowed it whole and looked at me with those swirling oily eyes and said he could show me the deepest desire of my heart, I said yes. The price was people. Not just any people. Parts of people. Organs. Flesh. Life. One of each kind, from different sources. He rattled off a list that went on longer than it had any right to. I told myself they were people no one would miss, and I was right, technically. Hollow-faced men on children's bicycles, women with beautiful faces and ancient broken eyes, the ones the desert collects and nobody counts. It took a month. In that month, Tyler started dating Brittany. She practically moved into my apartment. I walked in on them one evening, and I left before either of them saw me. I packed my things. Tyler caught me in the parking lot, crying. He said she didn't mean anything. He said he'd end it if I just asked. He looked at me the way he always did, like I was the only real thing. I told him that was the problem. I drove away and didn't look back. I moved into the warehouse. Daddy sang to me, fed me chocolates from the never-emptying bowl. He didn't ask for anything. Didn't need conversation or affection. He just existed in the dark with me. For a little while, honestly, it was a relief. I was almost done, almost finished with the list. One final item remained, a heart, a real heart, something that loved. And Daddy looked at me with those swirling eyes and said the heart had to be mine. Not my literal heart, he explained. The heart that belonged to me, the heart of someone who truly loved me. He meant Tyler. I almost walked out. I almost ran. But I kept thinking, Tyler didn't love me. He loved a version of me I had never actually been. His clean, perfect, untouchable girl. The moment he actually got what he wanted, he would stop wanting it. That's how it had always worked. The pedestal only existed because I was out of reach. I called him. He answered on the first ring. I told him I was sorry. He cried. I let him hold me. I let him have what he'd always wanted. And maybe because there was finally an end in sight, I was okay. Not happy, but okay. He was the happiest I had ever seen him on the drive to the warehouse. I led him through the dark, pausing every few minutes to let him hold my hand, to let him feel like he'd finally won something. Only when he saw Daddy did he understand that something was very wrong. Daddy stood up, all 9 feet of him, a nightmare built from every terrible thing you'd ever have seen in the dark. Tyler put himself between us, told me to run. I felt his hand on my back for one fraction of a second, his pulse beating through his wrist against my skin. And then Daddy grew and grew until he blotted out the lights and the world and everything in it. And Tyler was gone. I ran. I didn't fly, but I ran so fast across the desert floor that it almost felt the same. Stars everywhere above me, cold air ripping past, my lungs burning, the darkness swallowing the warehouse behind me. Somewhere around dawn, I fell. I watched the sky turn gold and red at the horizon, and then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, Tyler was there. He drove me home, helped me into the shower, put me to bed without a single question. I fell asleep before I could make sense of it. I woke in the afternoon, sun across the sheets, Tyler asleep beside me, his shirt ridden up over his back. I lifted the hem to look, expecting a tattoo, expecting an ex-girlfriend's name. What I found was 7 words, written in black marker, on his skin. Give Daddy a little more credit, honey. I still don't know what that means. I still don't know what Tyler is now. Fresh out of college, English degree in hand, applying to 6 jobs a week, and living off whatever sad combination of crackers and anxiety I could scrape together. My credit cards were maxed. My pride was barely holding on, but I kept telling myself something good was coming. And then Proficient Technologies called. Internet security company, decent pay, 2 subway stops from my apartment, health insurance. I didn't know the first thing about network systems or database security, but I applied anyway. Somehow, I got the job. My name is Gemma, and I really wish I had quit on day 1. The office was a massive open-plan workspace, rows and rows of desks, all occupied by men, not a single woman in sight. I told myself it was just an IT thing, totally normal, nothing to worry about. But the moment I walked through that door, the air changed. Keyboards stopped clicking, eyes followed me, no one said a word. The silence was louder than anything I'd ever heard. Tom, the guy at the front desk, walked me to my assigned seat, and that's when things started feeling off. The desk was covered in a thick layer of dust. Beneath the grime, there were pink floral stickers, a tiny worn-out teddy bear keychain, and printed memes taped to the side of the monitor. Someone had sat here before me, a girl, and she had left in a hurry. Tom muttered something under his breath and apologized for the mess. There were no other desks available, so I wiped it down myself and tried to focus on training. That was hard enough on its own. The manual read like a foreign language, but then I opened a desk drawer and found a notebook. The first page had 2 letters and a last name, S. Brooks, and what was inside changed everything. Sierra Brooks, whoever she was, had rewritten the entire manual in plain English. Clear, simple, helpful. Because of her, I was actually able to impress my manager by the end of the day. She had saved me without even knowing it. I held onto that notebook like a lifeline, but then I made the mistake of walking to the kitchen. The moment I stepped through that door, every conversation died. 5 men staring directly at me, and one of them, one pale, sneering guy with greasy dark hair and a hoodie, decided that was the perfect moment to be clever. He made some snide comment about my qualifications, implied I only got the job for the wrong reasons. I'm not usually a confrontational person, but I was tired and humiliated and running on absolutely no food, so I told him exactly where he could take his concerns. The room went quiet in a different way after that. I walked back to my desk with my head high and a mug of coffee, and that's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no name. You have quite an attitude, don't you? I froze, and then 2 more messages came through. One was a private photograph, something deeply personal, something I had only ever sent one person years ago in college. The second message said, "Why don't you take that photo to HR?" I sat there, completely still, staring at my phone. These men were ethical hackers. My password was something embarrassingly simple, and in one afternoon they had already found something I thought was buried and gone forever. I left my coffee untouched. I signed off. I barely made it to the subway before I started crying. That night was the longest of my life. I kept replaying it over and over, feeling sick every time I imagined what they'd shared, what they'd seen. But somewhere around 3 a.m., something shifted. I stopped crying and started thinking. Quitting wasn't an option. I needed that paycheck more than I needed dignity, which is a horrible thing to realize about yourself. Going to HR meant opening a case I couldn't prove. So I made a decision. Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't give them anything else to use. And it worked. For a while. I barely left my desk all week, eyes on the screen, headphones in. Thanks to Sierra's notebook, I stayed on top of everything my manager threw at me. No more texts, no more confrontations, just quiet, grinding, teeth-clenched survival. Until Friday, the last page of the notebook. She called it a night shift survival guide. Sleep during the day, before your shift. Don't fall asleep at the office. Don't let anyone in. Keep pepper spray nearby. Check every aisle, every meeting room. Don't forget under desks, behind the cooler, the balcony. Have a backup way to call for help in case your phone stops working. Check in with someone every single hour. I read it twice, then I told myself it was probably a joke, a paranoid overreaction. Maybe she just found the silence unsettling. Maybe she had the same problem I did with the staring. Maybe, but something in my gut wouldn't let it go. So before I left that Friday, I went to find Tom. I asked him about the girl who had worked at my desk before me. His typing stopped. His mouse stopped. He stared at a fixed point behind his monitor and said almost nothing. Then I described the guy from the kitchen, the pale one with the dark, curly hair. Tom told me his name was Sam, and the way he said it, carefully, like he was measuring every syllable, told me there was a lot more he wasn't saying. That weekend, I tracked down Sierra Brooks on LinkedIn. Unemployed, no recent activity. I sent her a message and asked if she'd ever been harassed by a former co-worker. Then I went to bed and tried to prepare myself for Monday. Monday's day shift passed in a blur of calls and tickets and caffeine. But just as I was logging off, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One line. Can't wait to see you take on night shift. I looked around the office. Sam was already gone. I went home, checked LinkedIn again. No reply from Sierra yet. I tried to sleep. Tuesday, my first night shift. The last of the day crew trickled out around 9. By 11, the calls had completely stopped. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the hum of the building settling around me. The overhead lights were all on, but the silence had a different texture at night, heavier, more deliberate. And then I heard it, a faint melody, tinkling and distant, like a music box, or a Christmas carol played through a toy. I couldn't place where it was coming from. I stood up, and it stopped. I told myself it was nothing. Someone's headphones left connected to a computer, music from a different floor. I did a sweep of the office anyway, checking each row of desks, the meeting rooms, the kitchen. Nobody. I even checked the balcony. Nothing. Standing in the kitchen, I started to relax. I found the cookie drawer. I was mid-bite when the melody started again, louder this time. And my work phone buzzed. Finally got to the cookies, huh? The cookie turned to chalk in my mouth. Someone was watching me. Right then, in that room, I pressed my back to the wall and listened. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing I could identify. I opened the kitchen drawer and took out a large knife. Did I know how to use it? No. Did it make me feel slightly less like prey? Barely. A call came through on the work phone. Static, clanking, then silence. I looked at the screen. The phone had completely shut off. I tried to restart it. Nothing. And then, somehow, one message appeared on the dead screen. Tut tut. Ladies really shouldn't use that sort of language. The screen cleared. More text. Why don't you come out and play? Don't bother taking that knife. It won't do much against my gun. I threw the phone and ran. At my desk, Heart slamming against my ribs, I found something waiting for me. A small pink stuffed pig, sitting right where I'd left my notebook. I pressed the button on its hoof. The melody started playing. That was it. That was the source. Someone had walked right up to my desk while I was in the kitchen and left it there. I pulled up Skype for Business and dialed 911. The operator picked up almost immediately. I opened my mouth to speak, and something grabbed my ankle from under the desk. I screamed. I ran. I didn't stop running until I burst through the front doors into the cold night air, where a stranger on the sidewalk let me use their phone to call for help. The police arrived within the hour, and what they found upstairs I still can't fully process. Sam Guilford was dead. He was found near my desk, stabbed 23 times with a large kitchen knife. The knife had been driven through his throat, pinning him to the floor. They questioned me for hours. I told them everything: the notebook, the texts, the photograph, the pig toy. They confirmed it all. Sam's phone was loaded with hacking apps. He had the photograph. He had sent every message. He had a gun in his hand when they found him. But the blood spatter didn't match my movements, and my fingerprints on the knife were partial, consistent with having grabbed it and then dropped it in a panic. The wounds on Sam's body told a very different story. Someone else had been in that office. Someone who moved without making a sound. Someone who had watched everything unfold and waited. And then, toward the end of the interrogation, the detective told me something that made the whole room tilt. 3 months ago, a report had been filed against Sam by a former co-worker. She had come straight from her first night shift to a hospital. She filed the police report 2 months later, after losing her job. It was her word against his. His lawyers were expensive. His co-workers lined up to defend him. Her name was Sierra Brooks. The day before Sam's body was found, Sierra had come to the precinct and dropped all charges. I was finally released and sent home without my coat, my bag, or my phone. Evidence. I sat at my laptop in the dark and stared at nothing for a while. Then, out of habit, I refreshed LinkedIn. I had a new message. Sierra Brooks. 1 line. "Don't worry, sis. I took care of it." I've read that message probably 50 times since then. I don't know exactly what Sierra did that night. I don't know how she got in. I don't know how she moved so quietly through that office, or how she knew exactly when to act. I'm not sure I want to know. What I do know is this: she left me a notebook full of everything I needed to survive. She warned me about the night shift. She told me to check under the desks, and when it mattered most, she came back. I still sleep with the lights on. I still flinch when my phone buzzes from an unknown number. And every now and then, late at night, I think about that empty desk, the dust, the pink stickers, the little teddy bear keychain. Someone sat there before me, someone who went through something I almost didn't survive, and I hope, wherever she is now, she's okay. When I was 6 years old, a frog saved my life, not just once, twice, and the second time, he saved my mom too. I know how that sounds, I do, but stay with me, because this story isn't what you think it is. My name is Ben, and when I was 6, my mom and I moved into my grandma Dorothy's house. Mom and Dad had been fighting for a long time, the kind of fighting that leaves bruises. So one day she packed a bag, took my hand, and we left. Grandma Dorothy loved us, but she also loved her quiet. I could always tell when I'd asked too many questions or been too loud. So I'd take myself outside and give her some peace. That was fine by me. Her backyard was enormous, big enough to run, climb, get lost in. There was a blackberry bush, an old shed, and at the very bottom of the yard, a pond. She told me never to go near it. I tried, I really did. It started on a warm summer morning. Mom was at work. Grandma Dorothy had her feet up watching television, cigarette in hand. I was inside playing with my toy cars on this old road mat I'd gotten for Christmas. She didn't say much, just gave me that look. The one that meant I already knew what she needed. "I think I'll go play outside, Grandma." She smiled, kissed my cheek with those big warm lips. Stay away from that pond, sweetheart. I will, I said, and I meant it. I meant it every single time. I found my soccer ball, or I found where it was, floating in the middle of the pond, staring up at me like it had gone there on purpose. I looked back at the house. Grandma was deep in her shows. She'd never know. I grabbed the longest stick I could find and leaned out over the water. I'd never been in a pool, never been to the beach. The biggest body of water I'd ever been in was the bathtub. I could not swim. The pond wasn't deep, but it was deep enough. My legs kicked, my arms thrashed. My mouth kept filling with this warm, stagnant water that tasted like mud and something I didn't have a word for yet. I tried to scream for Grandma, but every time I opened my mouth, the water got in instead. I went under, came back up, felt the algae stick to my face like cold fingers, went under again. Then everything went dark, and then it wasn't. I was on my back, a few feet from the edge of the pond, coughing up water, staring at the sky, alive. I didn't understand how I'd gotten there. I still don't. And then I heard a voice. Don't cry, little one. It wasn't deep like my dad's voice. It was soft, kind, like my teacher, Mr. Hayes, who always sounded like he was happy to see you. I sat up, looked side to side. Nothing. Down here, there was a frog sitting on my chest, small, greenish yellow, with mottled skin and eyes that seemed too aware. Its mouth was turned up in the corners, like a smile. A water beetle scurried across in front of it. Its tongue shot out. Excuse me, it said, swallowing. I sat completely still. Did you just talk? I asked. It nodded slowly. Now look, I know what you're thinking. I was a kid. Maybe I hit my head. Maybe I swallowed too much of that gross pond water. But I pinched my arm so hard it left a mark. I wasn't dreaming. I was wide awake, sitting in the wet grass, talking to a frog. Frogs can't talk, I told it. It laughed, actually laughed, a warm, low, rumbling sound. Technically, I'm not just a frog. I mean, I am, but that's what your kind call me. My kind. People. Humans. You are human, aren't you? Yes, I said. I'm a boy. It laughed again. I thought you might be. Do you have a name, little one? Ben. What's yours? It paused. I don't have one. It's just not something we do. That's sad. It tilted its little head. That's a very kind way to look at it. We talked for a while. I asked him how he could speak. He said some things in this world just can't be explained, and that he was one of those things. I told him that made him special. He said maybe it made me special too, because I was the only one who could hear him. Before I went back inside, he asked me something. Would you do something for me, Ben? Sure. I'd love you to give me a name, unless you're going to call me something ridiculous, like Hoppy. I giggled. I won't, I promise. Good. Next time we meet, hopefully I'll have a name. I waved as I walked back up the yard. Then I looked over my shoulder. Bye, Froggy, I said, and ran. His laughter followed me all the way to the back door. A few weeks passed. Then one afternoon I came home from school to the sound of my mum crying. Grandma Dorothy was gone. The house still smelled like her cigarettes for weeks after. Funny thing is, it wasn't unpleasant. It felt like she was still there, just in another room. Mum had to keep working. Sometimes there was a babysitter, a kind neighbor named Carol, but sometimes there wasn't. On those days, Mum would hold my face in her hands and say, "Promise me you'll be a good boy. Promise me you'll be safe." I always promised, and I always meant it. One of those afternoons, I was playing out back when I heard a familiar voice. Ben. I ran toward the pond before I even thought about it. "Slow down, little one," he called. "We don't want a repeat of last time." I sat cross-legged in front of him. He hopped onto my knee. It made me smile in a way I hadn't smiled in weeks. "Your mum is doing the best she can," he said, like he already knew what was weighing on me. "She loves you more than anything. Everything she does for you." I wiped my eye. "I know. I just miss Grandma." He was quiet for a moment. "Don't ask me how I know this, but she's nearby in some way, and she's happy you've got me as a friend." I laughed through tears, mostly happy ones. "Now," he said, "I believe you owe me something." I took a big breath. "I have your name, a good one." His little mouth curved upward. "Oh my, I can't wait to hear it." There was this movie. Grandma Dorothy and I used to watch it together all the time. It was objectively not a good film, but kids don't care about that. They just see the adventure, the heart, the parts that make them feel something. It was our movie, and to me, there was only one name that felt right. "Solomon," I said. "I'm naming you Solomon." He turned it over in his mind, tasted it, and then he smiled. "It's perfect." Things settled into a rhythm. I'd visit Solomon when I could. He always knew things he shouldn't have known. He'd tell me the truth when most adults would sugarcoat it, but underneath all of that, I always felt like he was watching out for me. One afternoon, we were lying in the grass, chatting about school. Solomon sitting on my chest like the first time, and then he stopped mid-conversation. His little webbed foot tapped against me. "Something's not right," he said. I sat up on my elbows. "What is it?" His face changed, something I'd never seen before. He looked worried. "Someone's coming, Ben. Someone you'll recognize. I need you to hear me clearly." He looked straight at me. "Whatever happens, you will be safe. Do you understand?" My stomach dropped. "You're scaring me, Solomon." "I know. I'm sorry. But believe me, you will be safe." A loud crash came from inside the house. I already knew the voice before I could make out the words. My dad. I hadn't seen him since we left. I hadn't wanted to. He wasn't a good man. I followed the sounds of disruption through the back door, into the kitchen, down the hall, to the living room. He was going through drawers, tossing things aside. It took him a moment to notice me standing there. He jumped, then laughed. "Where's your mother?" I said nothing. He didn't need me to. He said things about my mom that I won't repeat. He said things about Grandma Dorothy that made my whole body shake. He said he was looking for money and that there had to be something hidden somewhere in that house. I told him there was nothing. He said he'd look for himself. I ran to the phone by the staircase and started dialing. It was an old rotary dial. Each number felt like it took forever. I barely got through 2 digits before he crossed the room in 3 steps and yanked it out of my hand. He pushed me back against the stairs. I hit out at him. He just laughed. And then, sirens, distant but real, cutting right through the house. His whole face changed. He looked at the phone, looked at the door, looked at me. "That's not possible," he muttered. He backed up to the front door, said one last horrible thing I didn't fully understand at the time, and left. The door slammed so hard, a picture fell off the wall. I stood there shaking. Then I walked down to the pond. Solomon was already waiting. "Are you all right, little one?" I fell to my knees and cried. The good kind, if there is such a thing. Relief crying. "I believed you," I said through hiccups. "It was scary, but I believed you." He hopped onto my knee and sat there while I came down. "You're a very brave boy, Ben." When Mom got home, I told her everything. She held me so tight I could barely breathe, and she promised me she would never leave me alone again. For a while, things were okay, but they didn't stay that way. It was late, maybe 2, 3 in the morning. The storm had been building all night, the kind that makes the whole house feel electric. I loved storms, the sound of rain on the windows, the flicker of lightning spreading across the sky. I'd been watching it from my curtain, half asleep. Then came a crash from downstairs, not thunder, something else. Then voices, my mum's voice rising fast, and another one underneath it, low and ugly. I crept to my door, opened it just enough to hear. The floorboards were cold under my feet. I moved to the banister and looked down. Lightning lit up the hallway. My mum was on the floor. She was crawling, slowly. The back of her head was matted, with dark, wet hair. She looked up and found my eyes. Hers were wide and terrified. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. And then my dad came into view. He was holding a hammer. I ran. He heard me. His footsteps hit the stairs like gunshots. I slammed my door, tried to push a heavy dresser in front of it. It didn't budge an inch. He burst through, like the door wasn't even there. I ducked. The hammer hit the side of the dresser so hard, it left a dent I can still picture. I scrambled on my hands and knees. He grabbed me by the back of my pajamas, lifted me off the ground with one hand. I was dangling in the air, kicking at nothing. The hammer was raised above his head, and he was smiling. I couldn't reach his hand to bite it, so I did the next best thing. I kicked him, hard, right between the legs. He dropped me. I hit the bed. He hit the floor, but he fell against the door. I threw open the window. Rain hit my face like a slap. I looked down at the kitchen roof extension below. It didn't look like too much of a drop, but it was dark and wet, and I was barefoot and terrified. "You're dead, boy," he screamed, lunging across the bed. I went over the ledge. I hit the roof, feet first, rolled, slid down the slick wet tiles, and dropped into the backyard. The wet grass cushioned me just enough. I knocked the wind completely out of my chest, but I was alive. My wrist screamed when I tried to push myself up. 2 of my left toes felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, but I got up because I didn't have a choice. His voice came roaring from somewhere above me. I started running. The lightning helped. Each flash showed me a few more feet of yard. I headed for the pond. I didn't know why exactly. I just knew that's where Solomon was, and Solomon would know what to do. I ducked into the blackberry bush when I heard him land in the yard behind me. The thorns bit into my shoulder. I didn't care. I curled into the smallest shape I could and watched through the leaves. He was everywhere, smashing through the shed, yanking open bushes, roaring at the thunder like it owed him something. He looked completely out of his mind. Then the storm tripped the fuse box. The house lights flickered out. "Gotcha," he yelled, and ran back inside. I crawled out, limped the last few feet to the pond, and collapsed. "Little one." Solomon was at the water's edge. I reached out my good hand. He hopped on. "He hurt my mum, Solomon. I couldn't finish it. Listen to me." His voice was firm, steady. "She will make a full recovery, I promise you." "How do you know that?" "Because I'm special, remember. I also know you've broken 2 toes on your left foot, and your left wrist is fractured." I stared at him, rain running down my face. "Trust me, Ben." I did. I always did. "I can help you," he said, "but I need you to do something scary." "How scary?" "You need to bring your father to me." I shook my head hard. "He'll catch me before I get anywhere near you." "Not if you're fast and clever, and I know you're both." "Solomon, I'm just a little boy." He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was the softest I'd ever heard it. "Before you named me, I was just a little frog sitting in a pond. You made me something more, because you believed I was. You are so much more than just a little boy, Ben. Believe in yourself like I believe in you." I stroked his back gently with one finger. He closed his eyes. "We make each other special, don't we?" I said. He smiled. "Exactly. Now go, fast and clever." I stood up, looked back at the house. The lights had come back on. Solomon hopped to the edge of the pond. "Ben," he called as I started walking. I looked over my shoulder. "Thank you for being my friend." I smiled as best I could. Then I turned back to the house. I had work to do. The back door was open. The house was quiet. A part of me hoped he'd left. I picked up a small pot from the kitchen counter. My hand was shaking so badly, I nearly dropped it. Then I banged it against the cupboard door, as loud as I could. "Dad, I'm here." The floorboards answered immediately. Heavy, fast, deliberate. He appeared in the doorway with the hammer, grinning. I threw the pot. It barely grazed him, but it bought me a second. I turned and ran. I'd been planning on the way in, the blackberries I'd crushed on the doorstep, the logs from the woodpile I'd scattered across the yard, the branch on my favorite climbing tree that swung back just right. He hit every one of them, every single one, but he was still coming, and I was almost out of yard. The lightning lit up the pond ahead, and that's when I saw it. 2 enormous glowing eyes just above the surface of the water, rising slowly, a wide mouth upturned at the corners, the pale skin beneath it swelling with each deep, rhythmic croak. Those eyes locked onto mine, and the head motioned upward. I understood. I took a breath, hit the edge of the pond at full speed, leapt, landed on that wide, wet head, and felt it launch me forward. I cleared the pond completely, and landed hard on the other side. I spun around just in time to see my dad's face. He wasn't angry anymore. He was terrified. Solomon came out of the water like something from another world entirely. He was enormous. The pond exploded around him. His tongue shot out, wrapped around my dad's ankles, and pulled him off his feet. He screamed, clawed at the ground. The grass tore up in his hands. The hammer dropped. Solomon pulled him under, and the pond went still. Just like that, still. My mum made a full recovery, just like Solomon said she would. We moved away eventually. Life kept going, the way life does. I grew up. Mum got older. She's in her 70s now, healthy and stubborn as ever. We don't talk about that night. We never have. Some things you just carry quietly. A few weeks ago, I happened to be near Grandma Dorothy's old house. I didn't plan to stop. I just found myself parked out front, hands on the wheel, looking at those same windows. A woman came out, friendly, warm. She invited me inside when I told her I'd grown up there. The house had changed completely. 2 kids' bedrooms, family photos everywhere. My old room had a little desk and a soccer pennant on the wall. I got a lump in my throat I wasn't expecting. On the way back through the kitchen, I glanced out the window at the yard. "Do you still have the pond?" I asked. "Oh yes, my husband keeps koi." I stepped outside. The old grass and shed were gone, replaced with a patio and a little annex. There was a big trampoline in the middle of the yard. 6-year-old me would have lost his mind over that. The pond was beautiful now, ringed with smooth rocks. A small waterfall fed it at one end. The koi moved slowly under the surface, bright orange and white. I crouched down, watched them for a while. There was a croak to my left, a small frog, greenish yellow, mottled skin. It hopped toward me without hesitation and stopped right at my knee. It looked up. Its mouth seemed to curve slightly at the corners. I held out my hand. It climbed on without any prompting at all. I brought it close to my face. My heart was doing something I can't quite describe. "Solomon," I said quietly. "It's me. It's Ben." It didn't speak. It just looked at me and croaked, slow and content. I laughed softly and felt my eyes fill up. Once upon a time, a very special frog lived in this pond, and he was the best friend I ever had. I never got to thank him properly. My voice cracked a little. "So, thank you, Solomon." I moved to set it down gently, and it pressed one small webbed foot against the tip of my nose. Just once, lightly, like a tap. I sat there by that pond for a long time after. The woman and her family seemed genuinely warm. I could tell their kids were loved. And I thought about something Solomon once said to me, that he didn't think he'd ever meet anyone else special enough to talk to. But I think if the need ever arose, he'd find a way. He always did.